The galaxy was burning. Star after star saw its planets ruined by war. Whole civilizations had been swallowed by the endless conflict between two mighty empires, the Zorath Dominion and the Valari Alliance. For centuries their fleets clashed, their armies marched, and their weapons turned worlds into ash. Every race that lived in between their borders suffered, crushed beneath the weight of battles they did not start and could not stop. The Zorath were ruthless. They were reptilian giants with scaled hides built for war. Their empire valued strength above all else. To them, weakness was a crime and mercy was foolishness. Their fleets were massive, their armies endless, and their ambition without limit. The Valari were different but no less dangerous. They were tall, graceful insectoid beings with a hive-like unity. Their soldiers moved as one, their fleets obeyed with perfect coordination, and their empire thrived on discipline. Where the Zorath were brutal, the Valari were precise. Where the Zorath crushed planets, the Valari occupied them, draining resources until nothing was left, and between them lay the galaxy, choking under their struggle. The Galactic Council had tried to stop the war. The Council was a gathering of dozens of other species, some old, some young, who wished to keep peace. But against the Zorath and Valari, they were powerless. Their pleas were ignored, their warnings mocked. Every time they tried to mediate peace, negotiations broke down. Every time they called for ceasefire, another massacre followed. The war had lasted so long that some younger races believed it had no beginning, that it had always been. It had become part of life, like the turning of seasons or the passing of years. Yet the truth was simple. The war continued not because it could not end, but because no one could imagine an end. On the outer edges of Valari space, a planet burned. Once it had been home to billions of neutral civilians. Now it was nothing more than rubble. Zorath bombardments had stripped the surface clean, turning forests into deserts and cities into craters. The survivors, if there were any, huddled in caves, praying for mercy that would never come. Above the planet, Valari warships clashed with Zorath destroyers. Plasma fire lit the void, bright as suns. Ships exploded one by one, their crews turned to frozen corpses in the dark. It was another battle in a war with no number, no meaning. Victories and defeats blurred together. Every gain was temporary. Every loss was only fuel for revenge. At the center of it all sat the Council Station, far away in neutral space. Representatives of the galaxy gathered there, watching the war grow worse with every passing year. Counselor Threx, an elder of the Tayari species, slammed his clawed hand on the table. Enough. How many more worlds must die before we admit the truth? We are helpless against them. Helpless? Hissed another counselor. We are not helpless. We are cowards. If all races united, we could stop them. United? Threx spat bitterly. You think the Zorath or Valari would allow that? They would burn us before we could raise a fleet. Silence followed. Everyone knew he was right. The war had grown into something unstoppable. The Zorath fought for conquest, the Valari for survival. Both sides were locked in hatred so deep that reason had no place. The Council's dreams of peace were as thin as smoke, and so the galaxy despaired. Then came whispers. Whispers of a new species, a young one only recently reaching the stars. They called themselves humans. Compared to the great empires, they were nothing. Their fleets were small, their colonies few. They had no ancient legacy, no vast empire, no mighty armies. To the proud Zorath and Valari, humanity was less than an insect, too weak to be noticed, too fragile to matter. But to the smaller races, humanity was something else, a mystery. Reports came from border colonies. Human traders had arrived with supplies when no one else would help. Human doctors had treated wounded refugees, asking for nothing in return. Human captains had escorted convoys through dangerous routes, defying Zorath patrols. They were reckless, yes, foolish perhaps, but there was something in them the galaxy had not seen in centuries: hope. On Earth's capital ship, the UNS Resolute, Captain Elias Carter stood at the bridge, watching the holomap of the galaxy. Red markers glowed everywhere. Zorath fleets here, Valari forces there. The map looked like a wound that would never heal. His second officer, Commander Lee, frowned. We should stay out of this, Captain. This war isn't ours. No war stays out of anyone's reach forever, Carter replied. If we do nothing, one day it will come for us too. Lee sighed. You think we can stop them? Two empires who have fought for centuries. Carter's eyes were steady. Not stop them, but change them. That word, change, hung in the air. While humans debated their future, the war raged on. The Zoreth launched a new campaign, burning through neutral sectors. The Valari counterattacked with brutal efficiency, reclaiming lost ground. Civilian populations were caught in the middle, dying in silence while the empires fought without mercy. In one such system, the planet Yerevan called for aid. No one answered. The Council said their fleets were too weak. The Valari said it was not their concern. The Zoreth laughed and prepared another strike. Only the humans came. The UNS Dawnlight, a modest carrier, arrived with relief ships. Human Marines landed on the surface, evacuating civilians under fire. Their ships shielded transports even as Zoreth destroyers tore into their hulls. It was a hopeless mission. Everyone expected the humans to be crushed. But they fought with stubbornness no one had seen before. Even when outnumbered, even when bleeding, they did not run. For the first time, refugees looked up and saw something new in the night sky. Not another empire of destruction, but a hand reaching to pull them out of the fire. The Zoreth commander watching the battle sneered. Fools, they cannot win. The Valari admiral watching from afar was puzzled. Why risk themselves for strangers? Neither could understand, but the refugees understood. And the whispers grew louder. The war still raged, endless as before. But now, in quiet corners of the galaxy, questions began to form. Who were these humans? Why did they fight differently? Why did they care? When no one else cared anymore. The galaxy did not yet know the answer. But one thing was certain, something had changed. The endless war, once thought eternal, now had a new player. The war had been going on for so long that most species no longer believed it could end. The Zoreth and the Valari had fought for centuries, and every race in the galaxy had learned to live in the shadow of their hatred. But whispers of humans were spreading fast. At first, the galaxy laughed. Humans were small, fragile, and new to the stars. They had only a few colonies and only a handful of fleets. Compared to the massive empires, they were nothing. Yet their actions made people talk. They had saved refugees on Yerevan. They had stood against Zorath destroyers when everyone else ran. And most of all, they had done it not for conquest, not for resources, not for revenge. They had done it simply because it was right. For a galaxy drowning in endless war, this was something new. In the vast chambers of the Galactic Council Station, ambassadors gathered once more. The hall was filled with hundreds of species, their voices buzzing in different languages. Hollow screens floated above the council floor showing recent battles. Zoreth fleets burning colonies. Valari squadrons counterattacking with brutal precision. Councillor Threx of the Tayari raised his voice. We must address the human question. A murmur spread. Many councillors shifted uncomfortably. The humans are reckless, said a councillor from the Valari species, his antennae twitching with irritation. They intervene where they do not belong. They risk drawing the wrath of the empires onto all of us. Perhaps, said Councillor Vela of the Nhari, her eyes narrowing. But tell me, how many of our fleets have saved refugees in the last year? How many of us have dared to defy the Zorath or the Valari? The chamber grew quiet. No one wanted to admit the truth. Humans are unpredictable, Threx said at last. But perhaps that is exactly why we must pay attention. The empires see the war as eternal. Humans do not. That makes them dangerous. Far from the council in orbit around Earth, the human leadership gathered. The United Terran Assembly was a young government, still learning how to rule among the stars. But now they faced questions no young race should face. On the main screen, reports poured in. Zorath commanders demanding that humanity stay out of the war. Valari officials warning humans not to interfere again. Neutral species sending pleas for help. President Helena Ward sat at the head of the table. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. The galaxy is asking a question. What role will humanity play? We can no longer hide behind distance or youth. We are in the game now. General Marcus Steele, head of the fleet, leaned forward. Madam President, with respect, our fleets are small. If we openly join this war, either empire could crush us. But if we do nothing, Ward replied, what happens when the war spreads to our colonies? To Earth? The room was silent. They all knew the truth. Sooner or later, the endless war would reach humanity whether they wanted it or not. On the frontier, Captain Elias Carter and the crew of the UNS Resolute had already seen this truth. Their ship had been patrolling near the neutral system of Devara when the distress call came. Zorath raiders were burning civilian transports. Orders, Captain? Commander Lee asked. Carter studied the map. They were outnumbered 3-1. Any normal fleet would retreat, but Carter shook his head. Prepare to intercept. Civilians first. Weapons ready. The Resolute charged into the battle, its smaller human ships darting like knives around the massive Zorath destroyers. Instead of fighting head-on, they used decoys, misdirection, and electronic warfare. They blinded Zorath sensors, forced them to fire on empty space, and then slipped in to rescue the transports. By the time the Zorath regrouped, the civilians were gone, safe under human escort. The humans didn't win the battle, but they denied the Zorath their prize. News of the event spread quickly. Other races were shocked. No one fought like that. The Zorath used brute force. The Valari used perfect formations. But humans used tricks, speed, and imagination. They thought differently. In the halls of the Zorath Dominion, the warlords roared in fury. These humans are insects, spat General Korak, his scaled fists slamming against the war table. Yet they dare to challenge us? They humiliate us before the galaxy? The Zorath leader, High Dominator Vesher, growled deep in his throat. Then crush them. Show the galaxy what happens to those who interfere. And so the Zorath prepared to target human colonies. In the Valari Alliance, things were more complicated. Admiral Zira stood in silence, her many eyes studying the reports. Strange, she murmured. The humans save lives when no one else will. They fight not for conquest, but for others. That makes them dangerous. One of her advisors tilted his head. Shall we destroy them before they grow stronger? Zira considered this. Perhaps. But perhaps we should watch them first. The humans may yet prove useful. The Valari chose to wait. Meanwhile, among the smaller races, hope began to grow. On a refugee station orbiting a dying star, a young child of the Coralli species asked his mother, "Will the humans come for us too?" She smiled sadly. Perhaps, little one. Perhaps. The refugees had no fleets, no armies, no hope. But they had heard the stories. The humans cared when no one else cared. That alone was enough to spark dreams. Back on the Resolute, Carter and Lee spoke quietly in the captain's quarters. Why do we keep risking everything? Lee asked. We are not strong enough to fight the empires. Every time we intervene, we risk bringing destruction to our own people. Carter looked at him. Because someone has to. Look around, Lee. Everyone else has given up. The council is afraid. The smaller races are crushed. The empires only want blood. If humanity does nothing, then the war never ends. If we act, maybe, just maybe, we can change it. Lee was silent for a long time. Then he nodded. The galaxy was watching. Some saw humans as fools. Others saw them as reckless. But more and more began to wonder. Perhaps these strange newcomers were the only ones who could break the cycle. For centuries, everyone had believed the war could not be stopped. But now, because of humans, a new thought was growing. What if it could? The question spread across stations, colonies, and fleets. A question whispered in 1,000 tongues. What will the humans do next? The war had raged for centuries, but something new was stirring. The galaxy had begun to whisper the same question over and over. What will the humans do next? The Zorath Dominion ignored the whispers. To them, humans were weak, a noisy distraction. The Valari Alliance watched more carefully, curious but cautious. The smaller races hoped in secret, praying that humanity might bring something different to a galaxy drowning in blood. And then came the battle that no one would forget. The Valari shipyards of Dairos Prime were vast. Hundreds of kilometers of docks stretched across the void, building fleets to replace those lost in endless battles. It was here the Valari planned to construct their next generation of warships, vessels powerful enough to crush entire Zorath fleets. The Zorath knew this. And so they came. A massive invasion force burst into the system, hundreds of destroyers, carriers, and dreadnoughts. Their goal was simple: burn Dairos Prime and with it shatter the Valari's future. The Valari defenders rushed to meet them. Thousands of fighters launched, sleek and disciplined, moving in perfect formation. Capital ships lined up in rows, their cannons firing with mechanical precision. The battle began and space itself shook. Plasma fire ripped across the void. Explosions lit the darkness. Valari and Zorath ships clashed like titans, but the numbers were against the Valari. For every Zorath ship destroyed, 2 more pressed forward. Slowly, painfully, the Valari lines began to break. If Dairos Prime fell, the Valari would suffer a wound from which they might never recover. The war would tilt forever in the Zorath's favor. Watching from the edge of the system, hidden in the shadows, was the UNS Resolute and a small human fleet. Captain Elias Carter stood on the bridge, arms folded. His crew watched the holomap in silence. Red markers, Zorath fleets, were overwhelming the blue of Valari defenders. Commander Lee frowned. "Captain, this isn't our fight. If we engage, the Zorath will crush us." Carter didn't move. "You're right. This isn't our fight." He turned his eyes toward the battle. "But it will be our galaxy. If the Zorath win here, no one will be safe. Not the Valari, not us. Not anyone." Lee hesitated. "So what do we do?" Carter's lips curled into a thin smile. "We do what humans always do. We fight differently." The human fleet did not rush into the center of the battle. That would have been suicide. Instead, they spread out along the edges, small and quiet like wolves circling a wounded beast. The Zorath had predictable supply lines. Ammunition freighters and fuel convoys moved behind their main fleets, guarded but not heavily. The humans struck there first. Fast corvettes darted in, unleashing torpedoes. Convoys erupted in fire. Supply ships vanished before the Zorath even realized they were under attack. At the same time, human electronic warfare ships unleashed chaos. Zorath targeting systems flickered. Command scrambled. Entire squadrons fired on empty space, chasing ghosts created by human decoys. Valari commanders, at first confused, quickly adapted. They realized someone was helping them. And with the Zorath stumbling, the Valari pushed harder. For the first time in the battle, the Zorath assault slowed. On the Zorath flagship, General Korak bellowed with rage. "What is happening? Where are my supplies? Why do my ships fire at nothing?" His officers trembled. "Unknown interference, General. We suspect human ships." "Humans?" Korak's roar shook the chamber. "Insects! Crush them. Find them." But the humans refused to fight the Zorath head-on. Every time the Zorath tried to engage, the humans slipped away, striking from shadows, hitting weak points, then vanishing. They weren't fighting like an empire. They were fighting like survivors. On the Valari flagship, Admiral Zara watched closely. Her many eyes flickered as she studied the battle. "These humans," she whispered. "They change everything." Her officers waited, unsure what she meant. Zara's mandibles clicked softly. "The Zorath fight with brute force. We fight with order. But the humans fight with creativity. They make no sense, yet they turn the tide." "Shall we assist them?" asked her advisor. "No," Zara said. "We do not assist, we watch, and we remember." The battle raged for hours. The Zorath still had numbers, but their momentum was broken. Supplies dwindled. Confusion spread. Valari fleet struck back with renewed strength. Finally, after losing dozens of ships with nothing gained, the Zorath commander gave the order no one thought they would hear. Retreat. The Zorath Dominion had been stopped, and the galaxy had seen who made it possible. News spread like wildfire. Reports of the battle reached every corner of the galaxy. The Valari had held Dairos Prime, but only because humans had fought in ways no one else dared. On refugee stations, people cheered. On neutral worlds, whispers grew louder. On council stations, ambassadors argued. The galaxy asked a new question now, sharper than before. What are humans capable of? In the council chamber, debates erupted. "They are dangerous," shouted the Valari ambassador. "The Zorath will now target them with all their fury, and if the Valari decide to claim them as allies, the balance of the galaxy will shatter." Councillor Vela of the Nari stood calmly. "Dangerous, yes. But tell me, was the war not dangerous before? Did we not already live under the shadow of annihilation? Perhaps the humans are not a threat. Perhaps they are a chance," some agreed. Others feared. But all admitted one truth. Humanity could no longer be ignored. In the Valari High Command, Admiral Zara reported to her council. "The humans saved us today," one Valari lord said. Zara shook her head. "No, they saved themselves. Do not mistake them for servants or allies. They are something else, something unpredictable. They fight for reasons we do not yet understand. That makes them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. In the Zorath Dominion, General Korak knelt before High Dominator Vesher. The humans, Korak snarled, have made fools of us. They must be destroyed. Veshar's eyes glowed with fury. Yes, destroyed, no more whispers. No more hope. Burn their colonies. Crush their fleets. Show the galaxy that no one defies the Dominion. And so plans for war against humanity began. On the UNS Resolute, Captain Carter stood with his crew. They were battered, their ships scarred, but alive. Commander Lee shook his head. We did it. We changed the battle. Carter looked at the stars. Yes, but we also changed the war. His crew fell silent, realizing the weight of his words. Humanity had revealed a truth the galaxy could not unsee. The endless war was not eternal. It was only a cycle, and cycles could be broken. The spark had been lit. Across the galaxy, in refugee camps, council stations, and even enemy fleets, the same thought spread like wildfire. If humans could change one battle, what else could they change? The galaxy had begun to whisper the name humans with equal parts fear, curiosity, and hope. After Dairos Prime, it was clear. Humans fought differently. They did not rely on brute force like the Zorath. They did not follow perfect formations like the Valari. They adapted, created, and survived in ways no one could predict. And now, both empires had taken notice. In the Zorath Dominion, High Dominator Veshar paced the bridge of his flagship. His claws tapped a furious rhythm against the floor. General Korak, Veshar roared. The humans cannot be ignored. Every time we strike, they survive. Every time we plan, they disrupt us. How is this possible? They are weak, my lord, Korak replied. But clever. Too clever. Clever is not enough, Veshar snapped. Destroy their colonies. Hunt their fleets. Leave no corner untouched. They will pay for humiliating the Dominion. The Zorath began to mobilize every available fleet. Every Zorath ship capable of movement was ordered to hunt humans across the galaxy. The Valari, however, did not move in anger. They moved in calculation, Admiral Zera observed from her command station, her many eyes glowing softly. Humans are not our enemies, nor are they our allies, she said, but they are unpredictable. That makes them the greatest threat we have ever seen. Her advisors nodded. Do we strike first? Zera shook her head. No, we watch. We study and we learn. Then we act when the time is right. Meanwhile, humanity was quietly preparing. Captain Elias Carter stood on the bridge of the UNS Resolute, watching reports of Zorath movements and Valari observations. He knew the empires would soon turn full attention to them. Commander Lee approached. Captain, we cannot fight both empires at once. Our fleet is too small. Carter's eyes were steady. We won't fight them like they fight each other. We'll fight differently. Humans do not win by matching strength. We win by changing the rules. The human strategy was simple in theory but difficult in execution. Form a coalition with smaller races, exploit weaknesses, and force the empires to react instead of act. The first step came on the edge of the Morales sector, a region filled with neutral colonies. For decades, the Zorath and Valari had ignored these worlds, seeing them as too weak to matter. But humans saw opportunity. Human diplomats reached out to dozens of smaller species. The Korali, the Falari, the Tayari minor clans, and others who had been crushed under the weight of endless war. For the first time, these species felt a choice. They could join humans or continue to suffer under the Empire's shadow. One by one, they agreed. By the time the Zorath learned what humans were doing, a coalition of smaller races had quietly formed under human guidance. The Zorath struck first, attacking the neutral systems to destroy the coalition before it could grow stronger. Massive fleets emerged from the void, burning planets, crushing defenses, and demanding submission. But humans did not meet them head-on. They used guerrilla tactics, splitting into small groups, striking supply lines, and using every trick they had learned from studying centuries of war. Transport fleets carrying fuel and ammunition were destroyed before the Zorath realized they were missing. Electronic warfare ships scrambled sensors and communications, causing entire squadrons to fire on empty space. The Valari, watching from afar, were both amazed and cautious. Humans had turned the rules of war upside down. The Zorath could no longer rely on overwhelming numbers. Every plan they made could be countered by speed, cunning, or imagination. One notable battle took place near the asteroid field of Zircon's Maw. A Zorath fleet of 50 destroyers advanced toward a human convoy carrying essential supplies for coalition forces. Human scouts detected the fleet early. Instead of fleeing, Captain Carter devised a plan. Small human corvettes feigned vulnerability, drawing Zorath ships into the asteroid field. Hidden within were human bombers and electronic warfare ships. Once the Zorath ships were trapped in narrow passages, the humans struck from multiple directions. The result was devastating. 10 Zorath destroyers were destroyed. 10 more were forced to retreat, damaged and confused. Even Admiral Zara had to acknowledge the brilliance of the maneuver. They fight like the galaxy has never seen. Humans do not battle, they create chaos, and it bends to their favor. The Zorath were furious. High Dominator Veshar ordered fleets to hunt humans relentlessly. Every human fleet, every colony, every allied species was targeted. Yet with every strike, humans adapted. No two battles were the same. They exploited weaknesses the empires had ignored for centuries. Supply lines were disrupted. Communications jammed. Entire attacks failed before they even began. The war machine of the Zorath began to slow, not because humans were stronger, but because humans were unpredictable. For the coalition of smaller races, humanity was a revelation. Leaders of minor species who had never dared to resist the empires now saw a path forward. With humans teaching strategy, tactics, and ingenuity, they began to strike back. They no longer fought to survive, they fought to change their destiny. Civilians watched from the sidelines amazed. Refugee worlds began to rebuild, protected by human fleets. Trade resumed, even under the shadow of war. The galaxy had not seen hope in centuries, and yet the empires could not ignore it. The Valari, still cautious, finally acted. They approached human leaders with a mixture of curiosity and pragmatism. "You have altered the battlefield," Admiral Zira said to Captain Carter in a private channel. "But your coalition grows too strong. You may tip the balance entirely. How do you intend to proceed?" Carter's reply was calm. "We do not intend to take sides. We only intend to survive and help others survive with us. If we change the rules, everyone has a chance." Zira studied him. "Most species would claim victory, claim power. You do not. That is frightening." And with that, the Valari withdrew from interference, choosing to observe rather than attack, at least for now. As the coalition continued to grow, the Zorath realized they had underestimated humans, and the consequences were severe. An entire sector fell into human-led control, not because of sheer firepower, but because humans had forced the Zorath to react, to defend, to make mistakes. Each time the Zorath struck, they lost more resources. Each time humans adapted, the empire bled without meaning to. For the first time in centuries, the war did not favor the stronger. It favored the smarter, the faster, the unpredictable. Inside the Zorath War Council, panic spread. "We have lost ground." "How can this be?" Korak demanded. "The humans are too small, too weak, yet they humiliate us at every turn." Veshar's voice rumbled with rage. "We will crush them. Every fleet, every colony. They will pay." But the Empire had already made a fatal mistake. By underestimating humans, they had given smaller species hope. They had created a coalition that could not be ignored. The game had changed. On the human side, celebrations were quiet but meaningful. Ships were repaired, supplies replenished, lives were saved. Captain Carter stood on the Resolute's bridge looking at the stars. Commander Lee joined him. "Do you think we've turned the war?" Lee asked. Carter shook his head. "Not yet, but we've shown the galaxy that the war can be fought differently, that it doesn't have to be endless." "That's the real victory," Lee smiled faintly. "Then we keep going." "No matter the cost," Carter nodded. "No matter the cost." The humans were no longer small players in the galaxy. They had become the spark that could ignite change. The galaxy had never seen anything like humans. Centuries of war had taught the Zorath and Valari that power and precision ruled all. Empires rose and fell, fleets destroyed and rebuilt, civilizations crushed beneath endless battles. Nothing had changed the cycle, until now. Humans had entered the war, not as conquerors, but as something entirely different, a force that refused to follow the rules. They adapted, they created, and they united those whom the great empires had ignored. In doing so, they had shown the galaxy a truth no one wanted to admit. The war could end. The Zorath Dominion raged. High Dominator Vashar watched holographic reports of repeated defeats. Supply lines shattered, fleets ambushed, colonies saved by human ingenuity. His claws shook with fury. "General Korak," he roared. "The humans grow stronger, yet our fleets outnumber them 10-1. How can this be?" "They fight differently, my lord," Korak said through gritted teeth. "Not like the Velari. Not like us. They twist the rules of war into something unpredictable. We cannot defeat them with force alone." Vashar's eyes glowed with anger. "Then we must change our strategy. Every ship, every soldier, hunt them. Leave nothing. The humans will pay for humiliating the Dominion." But the galaxy had already begun to shift. Smaller species, inspired by humans, were fighting back. Every attempt to crush them only strengthened the coalition. The Zorath realized too late that humans had rewritten the game. On the Velari side, Admiral Zara watched in fascination. "They have done what no one could," she said to her officers. "They have united the weak, outsmarted the strong, and survived against the impossible. If they were an empire, the galaxy would kneel. Yet they fight for everyone, not themselves. That is the difference," her advisors murmured in astonishment. "How do we respond, Admiral?" Zara's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "We observe, we learn. The humans will show us the way, whether we like it or not. And when the time comes, we act. Not against them, but alongside them, if we choose wisely." The Velari had learned that sometimes power alone was not enough. Back in human space, Captain Elias Carter stood on the bridge of the UNS Resolute, watching the fleet assembled before him. Hundreds of ships from dozens of smaller species had come together, forming a force capable of defending entire sectors. Commander Lee approached, concern in his eyes. "Captain, the Zorath will come at us with everything they have. Our coalition is strong but not invincible." Carter nodded. "I know. But strength is not only measured by ships and weapons. It is measured by courage, creativity, and unity. We have all three." Lee studied him. "And if they attack anyway?" Carter smiled faintly. "Then we fight differently. That is what humans do." The first move came in the Morales sector, where the coalition had built its primary base. The Zorath fleet emerged from hyperspace, a monstrous armada of destroyers, carriers, and dreadnoughts. Their intent was clear: destroy the humans and scatter the coalition. Instead of meeting them head-on, the human fleet split into multiple small groups. Corvettes, frigates, and bombers moved through asteroid fields and nebulae, striking weak points in the Zorath formations. Supply ships exploded, weapon systems failed, and communications jammed. Chaos reigned, and the Zorath found themselves fighting not just for victory but for survival. The coalition, inspired by human leadership, attacked in unison. Corelli fighters darted between enemy ships. Velari snipers disabled power cores, and Tayari engineers sabotaged entire sections of the Zorath fleet. For the first time, smaller species fought as equals, not pawns. By the end of the battle, dozens of Zorath ships lay in ruins. Many others retreated in confusion. The galaxy watched in awe. News of the victory spread faster than any fleet could move. Colonies cheered, refugees wept, and council stations buzzed with disbelief. The Zorath had learned a painful lesson. Numbers and brute force were not enough. Humanity had shown that a clever mind and a united front could outmatch even the greatest empire. For the Velari, it was a revelation. They observed humans not as allies or enemies, but as a force of nature. They had changed the game. And now the galaxy itself would never be the same. The Galactic Council convened once more. Representatives argued, debated, and whispered. "They are a threat," shouted a Zorath sympathizer. "If we do not stop them, the entire galaxy will rise against us." "They are a hope," countered Vela of the Nari. "For centuries we have lived under the shadow of endless war. Humans have reminded us that the war can end, not through domination but through ingenuity and courage." Silence fell. Everyone knew she was right. Even the council could not deny that humans had proven a truth long forgotten. The rules of the galaxy were not fixed. They could be rewritten. On Deros Prime, survivors of the Velari shipyards gathered to witness history. The human fleet had protected the planet, ensuring the construction of new ships while saving thousands of civilians. One young Velari worker approached Captain Carter as he walked among the people. "Why do you risk yourselves for us?" he asked. Carter smiled, his eyes soft but firm. Because no one should live in fear forever. Because no one should be told they are too small to matter. And because we can. That is enough reason for humans. The Valari looked at him, understanding dawning. Perhaps there was more to war than victory and defeat. Perhaps there was something greater. Protection, unity, and courage. The Zorath, however, were not yet defeated. They launched one final assault, a desperate attempt to crush the humans and end the coalition. The battle stretched across multiple star systems. Fleets collided, planets shook, and explosions lit the void like artificial suns. Yet humans and their allies did not falter. Every attack was countered with ingenuity. Every ambush was turned into opportunity. The Zorath were forced back, their arrogance shattered. For the first time in centuries, they realized that victory might not be theirs. At the end of the war, the Galactic Council formally recognized humanity's role. President Helena Ward addressed the chamber. We did not come to conquer. We came to show that endless war can be stopped, that the weak can stand with courage, that the cycle of hatred can be broken. Today, the galaxy has learned what humans have always known. Even the smallest light can change the darkest night. Applause echoed through the chamber. Some species wept, some smiled, and some, the Zorath and Valari included, simply stared, realizing they had underestimated the human spirit. Captain Carter stood aboard the UNS Resolute, looking at the stars. Commander Lee joined him. We did it, Lee said softly. Carter shook his head. No, we didn't win. We changed the rules. We proved that the game itself can be rewritten. That is victory enough. Lee nodded, understanding. And the galaxy will never be the same. Carter smiled. No, it won't. In the years that followed, humans continued to lead quietly. They helped rebuild worlds, trained smaller races in defense and strategy, and ensured that no empire could dominate unchecked again. The Zorath retreated, nursing their wounds and reevaluating their approach to war. The Valari adapted, recognizing that intelligence and morality could be as powerful as fleets and weapons. And the smaller races flourished. They were no longer pawns. They had a voice, a role, and a protector in humanity. The war that had seemed endless had finally ended, not because the empires grew wise, not because victory had been easy, but because humans had changed the game forever.